I'm Anthony. The book, well, let me make something clear. My left hand shakes a lot. I'm not actually nervous, it just shakes. Like even during senior college on the announcements every day for the past 2 years, it's just always shook. So trying to get distracted by it, I'm not actually nervous, it just happens. So yeah, the book I did was To Kill a Mockingbird, obviously. Honestly, in the beginning of this project, I really wasn't too happy with this project. It just seemed too broad, I didn't really understand it. You know, project inspiration, are we supposed to be inspirational? Are we doing something that inspires other people? I didn't really get it. But I chose To Kill a Mockingbird. I honestly didn't reread it at all, just went off what I remember from sophomore year. As many of you know, To Kill a Mockingbird about Atticus Finch, a black man who was wrongfully convicted over something he didn't do. Racism, all that good stuff. Well, what I took from that, the topic I decided to go with was, what influences how you treat people? Because, you know, obviously he's wrongfully convicted, so I figured, you know, it's a good topic to go with. Honestly, I don't actually care what influences, you know, what you treat people. I don't actually care. It's just a broad topic I came up with to do the project on. Yeah, so I couldn't really think of anything to do, but, you know, I just needed something to do, so I came up with that. What influences how you treat people? But then after a lot of thinking, you know, where Matt and Gina more did like a physical thing where they went somewhere, they took pictures, they did all that. My project was more like the evolution of my thought process. I came up with like this broad topic, again, that's enough, don't really care about. Ended up at something that I actually really did care about. And I ended up choosing government and politics. And before your eyes glaze over, let me just remind you, when I say government and politics, you know, people think of government as like this big single entity, this big robot computer that just controls everything. No one really thinks much about it, whereas the government is really hundreds of people, everyday people who know what's going on. And then what I came up with, because obviously government and politics is, once again, too broad of a topic, but I was at least interested in it. So what I came to was the importance of staying politically informed. I got to that because in my family, politics and being politically informed is actually a big part of our family. You know, at our family dinner table, my little brother will actually talk about politics. You know, my dad can recite to you what's happened in Washington over the past week in a heartbeat. It's just always been a big thing. And it wasn't until about middle school that I realized that that's not really normal. Most families don't talk about politics and scandals and foreign affairs at their dinner table, but it always was for me. So I got kind of intrigued by that as to why people don't stay informed, and you know, is it really all that important to stay politically informed? And I was kind of confused as to how to go about doing that, because again, while Matt and Gina had access to a classroom and all that good stuff, I obviously don't have access to politicians. You know, I can't go interview Obama. So the best I could do was come up with some sample questions and ask people what they thought. And the 3 questions I came up with was the first one: do you feel you are well informed on the politics and affairs surrounding our government? That's fairly self-explanatory. How many of you honestly feel that you are informed on the politics and things that happen every day in this country? Okay, exactly. The second question was, how involved do you think the government is in our everyday lives? Now, this was actually this was my first question. That was like the whole project at first. But then as I delved into that question, came up with the second question. And that second question then led to this third question. Do you openly trust our government to make the right choices regarding the general welfare of the American public? So again, by show of hands, how many of you can honestly say that you trust what we call the government to make good decisions for, you know, general public? Okay. First question, do you feel you are well informed on the politics and affairs surrounding our government? Now, I asked 100 random people, friends, family, co-workers, you know, when they came up for the holidays, I did that. Didn't surprise me. 37 said yes, while 63 said no. Now, of course, you know, this is just raw data. This is a sample of the population. I can't survey all of America, so it can only be so accurate, but it's, you know, fairly good. But another thing that I noticed was that the most common reason, which is a question I didn't even ask, which was why, but people would just tell me why they didn't. And the most common thing I got was, who cares? Who honestly cares what's going on in Washington? It's just this thing you hear about on TV, on CNN, C-SPAN, blah, blah, blah. You're really not involved, so who cares? And the second one, which actually kind of scared me a bit, was this. Nothing they do really affects me. Nothing they really do in Washington really affects me. And this isn't just college students or high school students coming up with nothing that really affects me. These are adults, old people, you know, grown men, women. You know, I have coworkers who are, you know, 30, 35 who are saying nothing they really do affects me, which isn't really a good thing to say. But it led me to the second question, which was just how involved is the government in our daily lives? Because I really couldn't help but think, you know, I've been talking about politics for a long time with my family, but I never really truly thought just how involved is the government in our daily lives. And if all these people are saying, you know, they're really not all involved, well, is that true? And again, asked the question, from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed at night, just how much government involvement is there really? And again, another question I asked, of the 100 people, 37 said very involved, 39 said somewhat involved, and 34 said not at all involved. Now compared to the first question, I couldn't help but notice that there wasn't really a big difference. It's not like 80 people said this, 20 people said no. They're all not exactly level, but no one answer really stuck out. So I couldn't help, want to explore more, and then from that first question I got to that second question, and I delved into it more. And then I could just sit up here and read you more boring stats, but I decided to make more of a visual representation of the daily life of a college student. It's not one specific college student, but it's just, a kid waking up in the morning to go to bed at night, just how much government involvement is there really in a daily life?
I don't know if the speakers hooked into your computer.
Powers are vested by the U.S.
Yes, that's all I have to watch.
Our American government, a leading body composed of 3 distinct branches, legislative, executive, and judicial, which powers are vested by the U.S. Constitution in Congress, the President, and the federal courts. This body was established to defend the United States from foreign aggression, represent U.S. interests abroad, create and enforce national laws and regulations, administer domestic programs and agencies, and provide services to the public that are all designed to improve the lives of the United States population as well as the population around the world. But you already know all that. Now here's something you may not know. Just how much do you think the United States government is involved in our daily lives? So instead of Googling it, I decided to go out and ask what people thought. You wake up at 7 a.m. according to the standard time set by the national government. Next, you take a shower, water courtesy of the local government, either a public entity or a regulated private company. Now, you brush your teeth with toothpaste, whose cavity-fighting claims have been verified by a federal agency. You decide that a bowl of cereal with milk for breakfast. The nutrition facts on food labels are a federal requirement. The freshness dating on the milk are also based on state and federal standards. You drive or take public transportation to campus. Airbags and seatbelts required by federal and state laws. Roads and bridges paid for by state and local governments. Speed and traffic laws set by state and local governments. And public transportation is subsidized by all levels of government. Now you arrive on campus of a large public university. Buildings are 70% financed by state taxpayers. Your first class is Chemistry 101. Tuition is partially paid by a federal loan. The chemistry lab is paid for by grants from the National Science Foundation, a federal agency, and smaller grants from businesses, corporations that are made possible through federal income tax deductions for charitable contributions. You eat lunch. The college cafeteria is financed by the State Dormitory Authority on a land grant from the Federal Department of Agriculture. At 4 p.m., you go to the computer lab. The free computers, software, and internet access are all courtesy of state subsidies plus grants and discounts from IBM and Microsoft, the costs of which are all deducted from their corporate income taxes. There's also internet, which is built in part by the government, and the duplication of any of the software is protected by federal copyright laws. You eat dinner at 6 p.m. All of the meat that you're eating is inspected for bacteria by federal agencies. And robbed. You work a part-time job at the campus library with a minimum wage set by the federal government. The books and journals in the library are all paid for by state taxpayers. You drive home with street lighting paid for county and city governments, which are also being controlled by police, made possible through the city government. Now finally, at the end of your day, you decide to watch the TV. The networks are regulated by the federal government. The cable public access channels are required by city law, and the weather forecast is provided to broadcasters by a federal agency. Although it may not be blatantly obvious, the government is very heavily involved in every part of our lives, every single day.
So yeah, basically the gist of that was that it's not blatantly obvious really, but there quite is a lot of government involvement in things you do every day that you really don't think about. Which then led to my second question. Well, yes, that question. There's a lot of involvement clearly. So you would think something this big and this involved in our daily lives, people should trust it, people should embrace it, people should love it. So do you openly trust our government to make the right choices regarding the general welfare of the American public? That kind of surprised me, honestly. 29 said yes, while 71 said no, out of the 100 people asked. So of course, when I saw that, I was actually kind of disgruntled with myself. I thought, maybe I'd asked the wrong people, this doesn't seem right. This many people can't distrust the government. But then I delved deeper into that, and apparently since the 1960s, there have been numerous studies of this. There's been tons of other studies and campaigns and all that to really gauge how Americans trust the government. And since the 1960s, it has been steadily falling. Well, steadily falling, yes. Which, as you can guess, is probably not good. So from 1960 to 2010, it's just dropped rapidly. By 1980, trust in government had dropped to about 25%. The government response to the 9/11 attacks, however, helped increase it slightly. And then in 2008, Obama's re-election actually made it even worse. And of course, I couldn't help think, but why? Why don't people trust the government? And something strange I noticed about the data was that of the 63 people who answered no to do you feel you are well informed on the politics and affairs surrounding our government, 60 of them also answered no. Do you openly trust our government? And it couldn't help the thing that's kind of weird. If you don't keep up with what's going on in Washington, how can you say that you don't trust it? And don't get me wrong, there are tons of reasons for why people don't trust the government. Unauthorized surveillance, which does happen, tons of corruption, all that good stuff. But at the same time, a clueless public is not good. Having people who don't know what's going on in Washington is not a good thing. Again, from the video you can see there's a ton of government involvement, and people being this uninformed, again, isn't good. And the last part you're probably wondering is, this isn't really all that inspiring. Well, the point of it was to inspire you, because to keep yourself informed on everything that's going on. As you can see, the government is a huge part of our everyday lives and probably will continue to be. So, the point was to inspire you to, watch the news, read the newspapers, read online articles, talk to your friends, talk to your family, and stay involved. I'm not telling you to make it your center of your life, but, definitely keep up with it to some degree, because it's a huge thing. Because, again, a clueless public is very bad. And when you have a clueless public, you get things like this. Yeah, that's not working.
That's all right. You could explain what the video is. Can you bring it up on the desktop?
Oh my God, it's so American to say, like, the country and think that I assume America.
Just need to be a pain in the butt.
Which scandal really, really gets your goat?
Would Boston Marathon bombing be considered a scandal?
Right now, of recent, I would say the Benghazi. The IRS thing bugs me out.
He's been inundated with a lot of scandal recently. Does that bother you guys as Obama supporters?
It must be so rewarding to be one of your close friends.
Have you heard about the IRS scandal by any chance?
No, I have not. I don't think it's really like a huge scandal.
And you really believe that, Drew?
I don't know. To me, he seems like a good guy.
The IRS was actually targeting conservative groups and individuals because of their politics.
Well, that sounds fine with me.
Did you rip him off and take some money that he didn't need?
If somebody comes out and said that Obama said for you, IRS, to target Tea Party groups, then I'm going to have a problem with that.
And I hope that that's not true.
It is.
Oh, man.
Soaking it in?
Sweet Lord.
Does the AP spying story bother you?
No,
Now, why doesn't it?
I don't actually know anything about that.
He's getting all the phone records for reporters from the Associated Press.
All questions must be submitted in writing.
It's also just been revealed to have looked into the phone records of the Associated Press reporters.
Maybe he was looking at it in order to make his next move.
What was next move?
As far as like helping the economy.
This is your opinion?
It's a fact.
I'm like so trying to like fight for it.
You're doing a good job.
I always assume that a president will also be a criminal. There's no way to be an honest president of like a dishonest country.
You know where Benghazi is? Libya. Now, does it bother you about the fact that they didn't give those guys any tactical support during the raid and then try to spin a tale about a video afterwards?
If you look at going into Iraq, you talk to a lot of the commanders, they would say they were ill-equipped going into Iraq when George Bush was president.
You know where Libya is, though, right?
Yeah, Egypt.
Close to Egypt.
Obama, he brought us back from the darkness.
There's something wrong with your love story, baby.
Did you guys ever watch Bill O'Reilly on Fox News Channel? You're Factor fans by any chance?
I am back to back.
Yeah, I can't stand it.
Sorry, Ronnie.
He's from Levittown, right?
He is.
Yeah.
You might know who we are. We know who you are. Understand?
Hey, Bill. Maybe you can hire me when I graduate.
Waters.
Yeah, you get the gist of it. Once again, let me emphasize, I'm not calling anyone stupid or dumb or, any less than anyone else who stays involved in government, but as you can see, it's a big part of our lives, and this is what happens when people stay uninvolved and just turn their head away and don't think about what's going on. And yeah, pretty much it.